So, Daniel, thank you very much for jumping on today for this Ask Me Anything. First question, let's fire it at you. What's your perfect job?
So I want to be on a red team, or like even lead a red team, right? But at the moment, it's a bit difficult because of the restrictions on me. Like I'm just trying to stay in the industry. So there's like wanting something, and then there's doing something, I guess.
So I suppose the question, Daniel, was what's your perfect job? That, at the moment, from what you've said, it doesn't sound like it's possible for you to have your perfect job because of the restrictions. So long term, you say red team, any particular part of that that really excites you?
So like I used to do a lot with web application security, right? Like that's what I spent years doing, and that's like part of the reason I went to prison, because I ended up hacking a lot of different websites. So that's something that I want to keep doing, not hacking websites, but like web application, obviously. But like I'm just trying to stay in the industry. Like I'm open to different roles and stuff. Like I can adapt like really fast. So there's that basically.
So the next question, which I thought was a little bit brutal, I won't say who submitted this one. Obviously, we're all aware that you got arrested for computer hacking, spent some time in a horrendous prison. And the question is, have you thought about doing it again, Daniel?
No, like definitely not, because like it's been part of my life for like a decade, right? Like it's become part of my identity because I've been through it for such a long time. Like
Yeah.
my offending took place in what 2013, 2004. Well, that's when it started. 2013. Was arrested in 2015. Like I spent 4 years on bail, then went to prison for 2 years, and now I'm here. So doing it again would just like if I was to ever get caught doing something again, I would just go to prison for like a stupidly long time. So it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense for me to just do it for no like good reason.
No. Well, from a risk versus reward basis, it sounds like a stupid thing to do. And I think from your actions that you've demonstrated since being on probation and after leaving prison, it's clear that you're trying to help people now and educate people to the dangers that they face. And ironically, today, my wife's friend from our children's school, she messaged my wife saying that her Instagram account had been hacked. And you know, rightly or wrongly, were one of the first persons, apart from the community, that I sent the message out to on that. And it made me think there's definitely a place for educating the public on these things, and especially with the phishing links, etc. And I think maybe that could be an area perhaps you could focus on to start building up a bit of a brand around you. But next question. So this is a great one, I think. What advice would you give yourself if you could speak to you when you were 13?
Um, Probably get a life. like probably go out more, right? That would help. Like so, when I was like a young teenager, like I would spend like 8 to 14 hours a day behind a computer screen. I just used to fulfill every single like need through a computer screen. I would spend like months without going outside. And I think that didn't help at all. Like maybe if I went outside every now and then and actually had some form of a life, then I probably wouldn't have ended up well like I was.
You know, it's as a parent of six children, it's something that we
Mm.
say, get outside, get off the computer. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think appreciating nature as well, and actually being outside and appreciating everything around you and not being stuck in front of a computer is hugely important. And good answer. Yeah. Okay. Next
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Sorry, Danny, go on. You're going to say something else.
Yeah, all that I was gonna say is like, it doesn't always have to be about a computer, right? Like there's other things that you can do in life that you can enjoy. So that's what my issue was. Like my only focus was on computers, nothing else. That's all I used to do, like every single day. And it probably contributed to where I was today. So yeah.
I think I wasn't going to bring anyone in, but Larry has says that he doesn't agree with that. Larry, just jump in and tell me why, mate.
Yeah.
Here's why I don't agree with it. It made you, your past, everybody's past tends to make them who they are today.
Mm.
You know, and the thing about that is sometimes we go down dark roads and take wrong turns, but we learn from that. And from that learning, now we find our calling. you know, so I would not say that I regret anything I've ever done in my life. And there are things that most people do regret, but it's made me a better person because now I know what's right, what's wrong, but I also know how to handle and carry myself as well.
Yeah, which also helps, doesn't it? I mean, I'm with you on that, Larry, as well. And I've done some stupid things in the past. You know, for those that do know me, when I was 21, I got sent to jail, not for computer hacking, but it was actually for crashing my car. And I ended up getting 6 months in prison at that point. And I was 21 years old, and it was just before I went to Tenerife to live. And those 3 months in there were, at the time, the most awful thing that happened to me. And I know I can't compare this to 2 years, Daniel, because it is completely different. But it was, for me, the thing that changed the direction of my life and stopped me hanging around with the people I was hanging around with at that point. And I think what you're saying, Larry, is something similar where, would I change it? I mean, I'd change driving the car like an idiot. You know, I'd change drinking too much in the past, maybe, but also it does make you who you are. And there's no way I'd be spending as much time as I am now helping other people if I hadn't been through some crap myself. And I think, Dan, as much as, you know, people could think you're doing this just to try and get a job, it isn't that, because you've seen what happens from these
Yeah,
actions.
and
You've
yeah,
seen what
you know, it's
happens.
because yeah, exactly. It's because I've genuinely changed. That's the difference. I'm not just
Yeah.
like I'm not just doing it to get a job and then I'm never going to contribute to anything again. It's like the experience that I've been through, right, is what I try to share, not just like the end objective of a job or something.
Yeah, see, exactly that. Okay, on to some more technical questions now. And this is a good one. What was your preferred tool or tool set when assessing a website, or what is your preferred tool or tool set when assessing a website?
So it depended on the attack surface. Like usually I'd use Burp Suite, and then I'd use like a bunch of scripts. So like dir search. I'd use like a script for subdomain enumeration. I'd like use nmap. You know, I used to use like over 10 tools, but it would change depending on the attack surface that I'm looking at. So it's hard to answer unless there's like a specific attack surface in mind.
Well, in that case, then let's go straight on to the next one because it kind of relates. So, when assessing a website, what was your go-to target? So, what were you looking at? Were there certain areas of the site that you'd go for? Would you look at the comments section? Would you be looking in the search bars and the text fields? What would it be?
Yeah, so I try to find anything that accepts user input. So like I'd look for specific files or extensions that like contain any parameters that you can enter user input into. Like after that, I then start to look at like post authentication stuff. So it's basically just finding any like type of endpoint or parameter where you can sort of enter user input.
Yeah. And then from there, I suppose you'd then be looking at what methods you'd use to gain a foothold or get in.
Yeah. So your method basically changes depending on the attack surface or like the attack vector.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. What is the best way to identify vulnerabilities? Next.
So I'm gonna speak from like a criminal mindset, right? Because that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
And my approach was to like expand my attack surface. So like the bigger the attack surface, like the higher chance you have of finding something. Like some of the most secure websites that I've come across have been the ones with the smallest attack surface. Like if you give me like, I don't know, a WordPress blog with like no plugins and just one page, it's going to be so difficult for me to do anything to that website. On the other hand, if you give me like, I don't know, a website with like 20 subdomains, 30 endpoints, and like loads of different services, the chances of me finding something like goes up like hugely.
Next one then. What was your favorite, or what is your favorite AFL setup? American Fuzzy Whopper setup.
Yeah, so I think I think whoever submitted that looked at my Twitter because I made a post about it recently. But basically, what I've done is I've rented out like a cheap dedicated server that costs like £30 a month, and I'm just looking at like open source projects. So like, I'm currently fuzzing ClamAV, which is like an antivirus for Linux. And what I'm trying to do is get like a bunch of crashes so I can create like a blog post and basically show people how to like get their first CVE.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
That is a really good idea. Do you know how much the industry has changed in relation to security practices, I suppose, since before you went away, with regards to shifting left, dev training, pipeline scanning, regular security reviews and red teaming, hard-coded and adhered standards, etc.?
So it's hard for me to comment on that because I've never been in the industry. Like I've always been on the other side of it, and
Yeah.
there's probably like more awareness now. But one thing that I have noticed is like a significant increase in responsible disclosure policies. So like prior to me going to prison, not many websites used to run like responsible disclosure programs. Now you can find like thousands. If you just type it into Google, there's like all sorts of different websites that run bug bounty programs. So yeah, there's definitely that.
But isn't it going back to, going back to the chat we had before around when you were 13 and the fact that, was it Microsoft who were doing the rewards for identifying the vulnerabilities at the time?
Yeah, so like in 2013, there was like the thing is this like infosec community and like all of these bug bounty platforms like HackerOne and BugCrowd didn't exist in 2013. Like you didn't have that. What you had in 2013 was a bunch of like independent bug bounty programs, and like the rewards that you would get would be like, I don't know, an entry in a Hall of Fame or something. It wasn't as like widespread as it is today. So yeah.
I think it's even the last 2 or 3 years, the awareness of it has definitely shot up and things have definitely changed in the short time that I've been in here. Let's move on. Last question, actually, and it's from Larry. So, and it's a good one, and it kind of goes back to one of the first questions. Have you ever considered taking what you know about the vulnerabilities or attacks and then doing write-ups? I mean, you've mentioned that you were thinking about doing blog posts earlier, or videos for the common or novice users for some measures that they could take to either mitigate or thwart such malicious, easy for you to say, activities from their end. And do you think, but by doing a project like that, that perhaps it could put you in a different light with authorities and the public, which could then maybe lead on to removing or loosening some of the constraints that you've got and you're having to deal with? And the reason I've put that in at the end is because you and I have spoke about this, Daniel, before. So I thought it was a good one to bring up. How do you feel about that?
So, I thought of like starting a blog and like a YouTube channel, but the problem is that I have technical restrictions on me. So I couldn't do web application related stuff. If I started making like videos or blog posts, which, included having that type of material on my computer, like if I had loads of tools on my computer to like attack websites, like when the police come and inspect my computer, if that's on there, that could be misinterpreted. Like I'm still on probation, so they
But
could then use that against me.
doing it from the other angle, Daniel, from the angle of not from the technical side, but more of letting people know where the dangers are? I mean, we were talking earlier about doing this for CISOs, business leaders, kind of in the mind of a hacker, what they should be looking out for and what changes they need to make. And I think, excuse me, you could do that perhaps for the general public as well without mentioning tools or installing software at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, so like that's partially why I'm here today. Like I've studied speaking on a lot of podcasts and stuff, and it is something that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like communicate to a different target audience, right? But I'm just not familiar with that audience yet because all that I've pretty much done in the past is technical stuff. So it's still something I'm like experimenting with.
Well, I think it helps to have people who don't know anything like me, perhaps, Daniel, asking you the questions that other people would ask that no one who's got technical knowledge would. The problem is, I mean, I worked in financial services for 20 years, and it's very similar in the way that there's a lot of confusion around different terminologies and acronyms and all this stuff. And it's as though the gatekeeping side of the industry overcomplicate that sometimes. But I think in the information security industry, it isn't a case of people trying to overcomplicate it. It is just super complicated. And the biggest skill you can have really is trying to get that across to people who don't understand it. So perhaps a good way to go about that would be to look at the most common attack methods at the moment and then try and educate people around the steps that they can take, as Larry said, to mitigate that or potentially mitigate those threats.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, and that is something that I'm actually looking at the moment. So yeah.
Daniel, a massive thank you for taking the time to answer our community's questions, and we look forward to having you back in the community soon. Thanks for listening, everyone.